welcome back to Cinematic Sarcastic, podcast that talks all things movies and television. I'm Natalie, and I'm your host. On today's episode, we're going to continue with the Halloween-themed movies and talk about Death Becomes Her. Now, Death Becomes Her is a movie that came out in 1992. It stars Meryl Streep, Goldie Hawn, and Bruce Willis. Now, this is not your typical Halloween film. It's more of a dark comedy and something that I would put in the category similarly with like Hocus Pocus or maybe Evil Dead. Evil Dead might even be pushing it, but it's more of like potentially a family-friendly Halloween film to watch. It's very funny. There are some darker themes to this, so of course, know your children before letting them watch it. But this one is absolutely one of my favorites. I definitely watched as a kid. I completely loved it. So the premise of the movie is basically Madeline and Helen, which are Meryl Streep and Goldie Hawn, and they are throughout the entire movie fighting over Ernest, who is played by Bruce Willis. Now, at the beginning of the movie, he is in a relationship with Goldie Hawn, and she takes him to meet Madeline Ashcroft, who is this movie star friend of hers, and he falls instantly in love with her. They, get together and end up getting married, which of course sends Goldie Hawn straight into a psychiatric ward because of course it did. Who wouldn't be that upset about losing Bruce Willis? So a few years later, I think this movie jumps like 10 years or so, which we should all be used to now because of House of the Dragon, when Bruce Willis and Meryl Streep end up meeting up with Helen. Later in the film, they discover that she looks young, she looks radiant, she does not look like this sad, disheveled person that they are expecting. And Bruce Willis, of course, is intrigued. He feels guilty about leaving her behind because at this point, his relationship with Madeline has pretty much fallen apart. Well, Madeline, in an attempt to keep her husband and keep, the things that she has going for her, discovers that Goldie Hawn's character has gone to this woman who has a secret potion that will keep them young and beautiful forever. And of course, she buys it. Now, the whole rest of the film is essentially Goldie Hawn and Meryl Streep going at each other over just their jealousy and everything concerning like Ernest. And because they've taken this potion, they can't die, but they can sustain some pretty serious injuries. And that is where kind of a lot of the comedy comes in. They definitely basically fall apart while the movie is going, and it is the most fun to watch. They did a lot of very good practical effects, and of course this movie came out before CGI and things were a big use in films. This would probably be before CGI was a thing, so a lot of everything has to be done very practically with effects. And if you look at like the cover of this movie, that sequence, kind of the injury that Goldie Hawn sustains, is one of my absolute favorites. She has this giant hole in her stomach, essentially, and continues to live past it. None of this film is bloody or gory or gross or anything like that. I mean, some of them I guess could be, but it's not gory or gross in the way that like Smile would be, or anything by Rob Zombie. Like, it's done in such a comedic way that I think it takes away from some of that grossness. And plus, back in 1992, a lot of those films were more along the side of Evil Dead, where it's not as realistic, so it's not as scary, at least in my opinion. But definitely a good movie to watch. Absolutely one of my favorites to watch during Halloween. This one, I think, is probably on my like deal breakers movie list of those, if you haven't watched this, like, you can't sit with us kind of films. Like, I don't know how to talk to you if you haven't seen Death Becomes Her, because it's just so good. It's along the lines of like Star Wars and Willow and Lord of the Rings. Like, they're just movies that I think everyone should watch just for the joy of that particular film. So those are my thoughts on Death Becomes Her. I would love to know yours. Please do like and subscribe to the podcast if you want to join the Movie Nerd family. You can find me over on Instagram at Cinematic Sarcastic Podcast, and I hope to see you in the next episode.